any world building software is going to come with sort of an inbuilt approach, right?
Of course, that offers the maximum amount of flexibility.
It's again that temptation to fill.
The dark side of that is that it can also be overwhelming.
The more kind of technical and involved, the harder it is to approach it, right?
Yeah, you want to paste a picture into something, boom, it's just in there. 5 pages of text, boom, it's all on one page. You don't have to worry about it.
I spent 16 hours developing plate tectonics for my world, and none of the players even asked about it.
It can be hard to find the middle ground of some of that. So you've got this kind of incentivized world building space that also happens because the players are interacting within this specific software.
Hello and welcome to the Worldcraft Club, a podcast for writers, dungeon masters, and anybody else who wants to create rich, immersive settings for their audience to get lost in time and time again. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about something that I think y'all are going to be really interested in. You've created a world, you've established your setting, but you've got tons of information, lots of data floating around here and there. You've got your people groups arranged, you've got your cultures, you've got your land masses, and you've got to find a place to put them, and that place needs to be organized, right? If you don't have a World Builder's Journal, you might find yourself looking at resources online, websites, tools that you can use. So we have today with us John, who is going to talk with us a little bit about his perspective on
face reveal.
Yeah. So right. Yeah, John, if you just want to introduce yourself, let us know kind of where you're coming from and what your perspective on world building tools and resources can be.
Absolutely. So I'm John. Nice to meet you all. So I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons and other RPGs for more than 10 years, but I've been running games for about 9 of those years. As a forever DM.
It's dense experience,
right? And it's just been a super fun hobby of mine. I've done a couple of different podcasts and projects. Actually have worked on Worldcraft Club a little bit back in the past.
Yeah, you might recognize him from before.
So if you dig into the archives a little bit, but I'm coming on today just because I was tricked into being here thinking that there was a cage match between Patrick Rothfuss and Brandon Sanderson. They're not here, so I got these notes instead. But we've got basically different softwares, and I've become really fascinated on what different resources are out there on the internet that people can use, some of which for free, some of which for cheap, some of which for not cheap, but all of which, just really focusing on different areas of world building focus and needs. And I find that really cool. But when I'm trying to find stuff for myself, and sometimes depending on the campaign, my needs change and everyone's needs change a little bit. Yeah. So just wanted to talk through a little bit about what people might need and how you should think about how you want to organize your content. And then also what is out there a little bit. It's kind of a quick review of some of the things that I've seen and some things I like and some things I don't like. But I figured we could jump into that a little bit. But what are your questions initially of what are you thinking about where we should jump in on this? Because I know we have the World Building Journal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And
which is a great resource and you should check it out. Plugging my friends here.
It's much appreciated.
Yep.
I think with these, it's tricky, right? Because any world building software is going to come with sort of an inbuilt approach, right? They're going to have a preferred way of looking at world building. And this is partly why, when we had talked, before recording, I wanted you to give this little introduction. So people sort of had a vibe of kind of who you are and how you're coming at this as a DM, mostly running campaigns. You're looking at this a certain way. And so that would allow anybody listening to sort of moderate what you're saying and go, okay, this seems to be John's vibe. I'm maybe a little more analytical, or I'm a little more haphazard, and I can kind of see where I sit. So with that, what criteria would you actually want to use in your own take for reviewing this software? How Absolutely. Are you reviewing it? What's your approach?
So knowing my biases is going to be important. So typically I'm in one of two camps when it comes to world building. I'm typically modifying an existing setting to my own theming and my own needs and my own campaign that I'm going to be running, or I'm just building from scratch to kind of set up a macro level situation for however many campaigns or scenarios that I want to run.
Yeah.
So that's like going from small potatoes to like really big potatoes.
Yeah, sort of like tweaking something to
right.
big potatoes.
And it can be hard to like find the middle ground of some of that. But I think that I'm going to find value in something that is flexible and allowable in some of those different areas of world building. Yeah. But I also like being able to have tools for very specific needs as they come up, depending on the campaign.
Yeah.
I'm not someone who typically uses like a campaign manager style resource. We'll talk a little bit about that. But I do really enjoy having softwares that have some sort of map functionality as well, that I can just plot things down.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, I guess we could just kind of jump into that a little bit of the 4 different categories they've kind of created for what's available out there in the sphere. So you're going to have, starting from the simplest, it's going to be notebooks. Then you're going to have wikis.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have campaign managers, and then you have total package.
Yeah.
So notebooks, typically things where you throw some words onto a document, you save that document. Congratulations, it exists.
You now have a document.
You now have words somewhere saved on your computer.
All right, good start, good start.
And of course, that offers the maximum amount of flexibility in how you want to write and put things onto paper.
Yeah.
It also offers the least amount of guiding structure.
Yeah.
And sometimes we need that as world builders. Wikis typically have a little bit of additive structure to guiding systems, interactive systems. These are good for people that want to be writing things and interconnect articles very quickly for quick reference, as well as sometimes people who want to write resources that are accessible to other people, whether that be authors that want to just put in notes for, patrons or close followers of their projects. They can put it on a wiki and then people can look up that information. Or for campaigns, if it's like, hey, you just walked into this city, now I've made that city public on the wiki and you can read it.
Yeah.
And that's super helpful for being a little bit more of a guiding force.
Yeah.
But there's often a lot of templates, and all of a sudden you're dealing with CSS code and things like that if you really want to get shiny with it.
Yeah.
Sometimes the jump from nothing to a lot of things can be pretty heavy.
Yeah, there's like this. I always think about these things as a spectrum. My background is engineering, and my perspective often is the more kind of technical and involved, the harder it is to approach it, right? So you can create something that has all the bells and whistles, but it's going to be a steep learning curve to get access to it and to use it well, right? You get something on the other end that's completely flexible, and you're going to run into people being able to very easily sort of get in, plug and play, and get on with it, but they might not have the specificity that they need to get the stuff done that they're looking for. And I can see that as being tricky because, again, each of these softwares is going to have sort of an approach to world building that they're going to try to guide you into in a way, right? Like they're saying this is what you should be thinking about. You've created such and such a thing. Oh, do you want to create factions for this people group? Do you want to create languages and accents
and a lot of the fun things about wikis is that they often have pre-created categories and options for you to insert certain ideas into your world, whether that be through prompts or just subcategories that are built into the wiki software, where you think, oh, I didn't think about, the plant life or the geography of my world before, but maybe I should think about that. Maybe I should put some of that information in there, and it can be helpful in prompting that way. The dark side of that is that it can also be overwhelming. So if you're thinking, oh, now I have to write all about like the mountain ranges and other things like that, I haven't thought about like the tetronics of my world and things.
You can get trapped.
Yeah, you can absolutely get trapped in the detail. And sometimes over details that, as far as like storytelling wise goes,
don't matter.
It doesn't matter. Plate tectonics, not going to matter for most campaigns. Maybe some. I'm not going to deny it, but like it's not going to matter for some campaigns.
I had that meme with that like haggard looking dog that just looks horrified and sad. And I'd written on there, I spent 16 hours developing plate tectonics for my world, and none of the players even asked about it. And it's like,
Right.
there's sometimes you go too far, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is though, is like I'm definitely a, you know, each to their own kind of mentality. Some people just like to build chips in bottles, like that's what they like to do, and you know, fair play to them. And if they feel like that informs their setting and like helps, I don't know. Sometimes you have cataclysms or something like that in your event, and you want to realistically portray that, so you're moving mountain ranges around and you're like spanning millennia or millions of years between campaigns and stuff, and you're kind of thinking about that. And fair enough, you know what I mean, fair enough. But it's just like the temptation to just drill way too deep for what you're trying to make.
Absolutely.
That's a very real temptation for a lot of world builders.
Absolutely. It's something that's like, just because there's the hooks and bait out there to write it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to write it right now or ever, really, for a world. Sometimes you can leave something sit until when it needs to come up later. And that's fine. But the temptation with that wiki software is write it all right now, and then you'll never be able to put out a campaign ever for the world that you're building, because you're writing all of this content that ultimately might not matter. So it depends on where you're going to be able to focus on that software. But that's also where the campaign manager system comes in. There's fewer systems out there that are like this, but there's some software that will come in and be specifically for running D&D campaigns. And that typically involves a little bit of world building, a little bit of entry of city information, of the landscape, maps. And it's going to be typically a little bit light on the actual data entry of world building. But it's normally coupled with this other segment that's like, hey, here's a shop. It's a tavern. You have preset in it the cost of things, the cost of drinks and food and staying the night. Here you have another thing where the players can put icons onto a map and talk about where they want to go next. It's very interactive, and it makes tracking your campaigns a lot easier, with the sacrifice usually of some of the actual world building content. I throw this in there because it is a world building tool to be able to actually put in the information that is valuable to your players into a system that they can interact with. The problem is sometimes with that system is that it doesn't have all of the beef and structure that you want backing the immediate interactable information. And then it's also like you're interfacing directly with the players. It can be a little bit hard to hide some of the valuable information, like the big bad's top secret thing. If you're not careful, you might accidentally publish that to all of your players, and then that's a problem in and of itself. And so it takes a little bit more delicate handling, and also you might have to use some of like the notebook softwares to temporarily store information until it goes into those campaign managers. But still really worth looking into as far as software.
Okay.
Yeah,
let's bring out the contestants here. Let's.
Okay.
I think this is really good.
Sure.
Like, I real quick though, by what criteria are you judging these? Because we've got sort of a rough idea of the categories we're looking at with them, from notebook to campaign manager and the work through on that. How do you judge the goodness of each of these?
Right. So when I was looking at software, each thing kind of has its own pros and cons in terms of price, in terms of what it offers, if it's simple to use, if it's complex. And it's very much so going to be like a car market in the sense that, hey, just because a Lamborghini or a Ferrari doesn't mean it's going to be a great 8-seater sedan for a large family. Like, in fact, it's going to be terrible for that sort of thing.
It's for the person, right? The different person's going to have a different need in there that they can move it forward on.
Right, exactly. Whereas, like, a Toyota Odyssey or a Honda Odyssey, that's going to be perfect for, the family vehicle, but it absolutely will not be a fun ride for the corporate executive who wants to go 120 down a highway. So it's something that I've created a set of adjectives that I will describe each software,
Yeah.
hoping to describe their usefulness to people. And then it's like, that sounds like me. Excellent.
Perfect. Yeah.
If
yeah.
it doesn't sound like you, that's cool too.
Yeah.
Hopefully it gives you that information. And I have some other things of like, how long has this been online? Or how is
well
this
supported
focusing
is it?
on,
Yeah.
how is it focusing on the audience? What
Yeah.
type of person is this going to be good for? And then I also have information on pricing too. Not anything specific because pricing online constantly changes.
Yeah.
And to keep this episode timeless, I'm not putting hard tax on any pricing.
Yeah.
But we can get a good idea of what their target market is based on
Yeah.
where they're pushing the pins on your wallet.
And we'll also make sure that all the links are available in the show notes for folks who want to find this software and make use of it. And like, as per usual, kind of like Worldcraft Club standard is like, we look at this stuff, we always have kind of a positive spin on it. We're not throwing shade at any of these guys. We're just kind of looking at what they're doing and asking, is it the right thing for you?
Absolutely.
Right? And so, yeah, without much further ado,
Let's
bring out the contestants.
All right. So let's start with a notebook, if we will. One of my favorite notebook softwares that I've used, OneNote.
OneNote.
Yep,
Yeah,
just
actually,
OneNote.
You can also kind of wiki OneNote too. You can put a bunch of links internally, and OneNote's really good.
OneNote is super duper flexible. You can add lots of categories, tabs, subcategories, subpages, and you can really break that down as much as you want to. And it gives you a ton of space to really throw information that you want into there.
Yeah.
So you want to paste a picture into something, boom, it's just in there. A link, boom, it's in there. 5 pages of text, boom, it's all on one page. You don't have to worry about it, right? The most free form that you can be, the most flexibility overall with lots of different texts and styles and things like that. And also super easy to print out things if you need to copy and paste something into a Word document or into a Google document. Or just
there's even light formatting in OneNote.
Yeah,
that like you can organize it by headers and things like that, which is nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it honestly is really great for organizing your own project, especially if you're first getting started. Something like OneNote is going to be really nice. If you don't have access to OneNote, I believe it's free, but if it for whatever reason you can't have access to it, then you could do something very similar with a Google account and doing Google Docs. It's not quite as freeform as OneNote, but honestly, it's files and substructures and, folders within folders and someplace that's not taking up gigabytes of data on your computer. So that's something to consider too. But I really like using OneNote. The problem, and I run into this professionally and on the side doing world building stuff, is that OneNote has infinite space for you to fill.
Yeah.
And like some of the other formats and things also do. But having just an ever expanding scroll bar that just keeps moving as you keep typing, putting a finite ending to things can be difficult.
Yeah, it's again that temptation to fill, and there's a certain amount of personal curation that would need to take place. Like you're using OneNote to generate this stuff. You kind of want to go through it and scrap stuff that you're not using or is not relevant. There may be times where you fill a whole page and realize actually these are a series of subcategories. I need some cleanliness. And that's something that falls completely to you because it's freeform, right? So. But I have a feeling like that honestly, before anybody starts investing in world building software, I would say like give OneNote a whirl and kind of just get your head into it and realize like what do I need? You know, like what do I like to make? And
It's so like I put it under the category of simple and programmable because it's like it's nothing crazy. You're not going to get like super pretty OneNote pages or anything, unless you really put in a lot of work for it. And programmable,
then you may as well just get some software that's designed to do it.
Right. It's like, if you just put a little bit of work into it, then yeah, it's nice and easy. And then the price, like, you might need an Office 365 subscription.
That might be the thing, yeah.
But I've also seen OneNote come on its own in certain cases. So it depends on how you're able to secure that license for OneNote.
Yeah.
But overall, it's a really good software. I highly recommend it, especially for someone who just wants to start putting down words to paper.
Yeah.
A great way to back that up.
Yeah, that's honestly something we really recommend. Is like if you've got an idea for a world in your head, just start writing stuff down, and like OneNote's a good place than any to get going.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next thing that I'll save Wiki for last because I'm using something right now that I really like, and I'll talk about it at the end. But how about a campaign manager?
Yeah.
So there's a software that's newer. It's 2019, so it actually has been out in development for like 5-ish years now. But it's called Chronica, and it is a campaign manager where you can put in all sorts of different characters, all sorts of different locations, and all of the different interactable shops and things.
Oh.
The really cool thing is that it's fairly simple to use, and it's simple and arrangeable, so there's not a ton of customizability with how your pages look and things like that.
Yeah.
But you can upload images, you can make things look nice, you can write in information, and it's super duper helpful when running a campaign, especially if you're running a West March style campaign. It was actually built specifically for a West March, which for people that don't know is a campaign style where you have one setting, kind of one or a few DMs working together on a similar world or goal, and then you have a broad pool of players. And the players self-organize to jump in and play a session with a DM, and then they run in that world, and it advances the story or it advances the setting just a little bit further.
It's kind of like micro MMO with pen and paper.
Yeah, absolutely. So very similar to like if you have, Elder Scrolls Online group that
the plot is advancing and you're all playing a role in it.
Right. But you have 30 guild members and, 4 of you can get on in a night. Okay, you get on, you go do a quest or two, and then you put your stuff into the guild bank, and then you leave for the evening. Yeah. And then the next day, there might be the same or some other guild members, maybe a few more, maybe a few less. It depends.
So this is designed then for the long haul. This is designed to keep track of a world in which we have lots of players and DMs interacting with each other. So it's almost, it's specialized for world advancement in D&D.
Absolutely.
That's really what's the software?
It's called it's all right. Yeah. It's called Chronica. So that's CHRONICA. Okay. And I used it for a little while when I was running a West March. Really did enjoy it. The trouble with running a big campaign like that is that when you have 30 players and some of them are running games with other DMs, it can be hard to keep track of stuff like magic items, gold, other things. Sometimes a player is like, hey, I'm a ranger who specializes in, ranged weapons, and I just picked up this Holy Avenger. Right, and it's like, I don't need this. Does someone have 500 gold? I'll give it to you.
Yeah.
And it can handle things like that, where people can put on items for sale, other players can pick it up, and then that tracks it in the background so that players don't necessarily have to bug their DMs to manage interactions and other things like that, as well as creating forums and other areas that the players can interact in a singular space.
Yeah.
So you've got this kind of incentivized world building space that also happens because the players are interacting within this specific software itself.
Wow.
Now, the downside of something like this is that it is restrained. I mentioned this earlier, so I won't go too much more in detail, but you're not going to do plate tectonics in this software.
You're not going to, it's not for a deep dive on the specifics of a given dialect within a subculture of elves kind of thing. This
is very much so like, hey, if the players are scraping against it, then they will find out what it is. So whether that be a specific location or a city or a character, you can put that information on there. But as you go through, if you're wanting the deeper world building details, that's not going to be as easy to put in. You might be able to do a forum post, but at that point, you're just doing an online text post, in which case, OneNote.
You can sort of bootstrap it to kind of do that stuff, but you're sort of making the tools do things they're not really designed to do, so you're going to kind of be on your own a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's interesting. It sounds like this has a very specific application, but it's just incredibly useful in that given application. So I can also see, like, the West Marches campaign. You could sort of you could utilize that in a few different ways. You could run a non-West Marches campaign in it, but the tool is just overpowered for what you're doing, because you're not having all that player interaction. But you could definitely, I could see how that could work for a bunch of different applications. Chronica. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's super duper cool. And also, it's not just for Dungeons and Dragons. It's designed for that specific kind of play. But I will just say, for people that are interested, you can modify the character sheets and stuff to have whatever you want. It does take some time to program, but if you're going in that way, if you really want to play GURPS, sorry, I'm realizing when I'm dangling the carrot here.
You see, John, it's a toolkit. Carry on. Sorry. Yeah.
I mean, Cyberpunk, Pathfinder, 5e,
7C, Through the Breach.
Exactly. Anything you can put in. Exactly. Yeah. You can put anything in there. But it does take time. That's the thing, is that it does give you that blank slate, but you have to build it in. So just note, if you're wanting something simple and easy, it will take some setup time to get it to there. But that's not necessarily a bad thing.
That's good to know. I see where that could fit, for sure. Yeah.
All right. So Wiki I mentioned, and I will just, reiterate that wikis are going to be more like quick access information, like a Wikipedia specific to your world. You can
kick somebody an article.
Right. Yeah. I will discuss that a little bit more, but I think that in and of itself is good to understand the total package.
Yeah.
So total package is going to be a mixture of all things. Yeah. It's a campaign manager. You're going to be able to take notes. You're going to be able to have your maps.
It's a Swiss Army knife. You can sort of do anything you want with it.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a couple of these out there in the world, and they're very cool to look at.
Yeah.
But they're not always very fun to use. Yeah. I'm going to have a little bit of a controversial opinion here, but I'm going to use this example. I really love this software, and I also really don't like using the software at times.
Yeah.
So, again, my personal opinion, not an endorsement by anybody, but World Anvil is kind of the known Cadillac of world building software. If you're listening to this podcast, you've probably heard of it.
Yeah, you'll be aware.
If you're not, that's fine, but now you have.
Well, now you've done it, John.
Right. So World Anvil started back in 2017, and has grown to basically be the known software. If you say, world building software, that's probably going to be
they're going to be the point of comparison, right? Like, people are going to say, is it like this, like that? Yeah.
And I think that it's important to know that it has the tools to do everything.
Yeah.
You don't always need it to do everything.
Yeah.
But it's all there if you want it.
Yeah.
So initially, it was mostly a wiki software, which is great. But they started to add these features that are also like Campaign Manager. So people can put their fully created characters on there, level up the characters on the software. Again, system agnostic. There's a few presets for if you're doing 5e or Pathfinder or GURPS that you can put it on there, and then it will fill out the kind of pre-labeled balloons that you need to fill out your characters and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And then you can kick articles to your players, utilize the maps that are uploaded to that software, put pins on the maps and things like that, which is always fun to have that interactability. I personally love the timelines that you can put on there, because you'll be writing an article and you can toggle it that, hey, this is a historical event. And it'll say, great, which timeline does it go on to? It goes on to this timeline. Great. What time does this happen? It happened at this date.
Yeah.
Great. You can customize the dates too, so you can follow like your own kind of naming convention or numbering conventions.
Yeah, that fourth dimensional world building is like really useful, where you can consider, because it's a lot of times history is what people are thinking about. But when they talk about world building, most people think a snapshot of a time and place and what's present in it. The idea that you can develop these interactive timelines and tag things within them, very nice feature.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And being able to see the end product of all of the things that have happened in a timeline, which can include like sessions. You actually played in a game that I ran one time, and I put each session report that we wrote, which you can write session reports too.
Oh, cool.
Into the timeline. So you can see between this big event and this big event, this party did these things, and you can see how they tied into things.
That's really nice.
It is really nice.
Yeah.
And that's how it's also a campaign manager, and how it really ties into the integral functions of your world and really shows how all things are interacting. It is also a copious mess at times.
Yeah, there's too much.
Right.
It's like where you see 6 different types of ranch dressing at the supermarket, and it causes more stress than it solves ranch dressing problems.
Right. I called it the Cadillac of world building software, but it's probably more accurate to call it the nuclear submarine of world building software.
I get you. Yeah, I know. I see where you're coming from.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you're not going to be able to just hop into a nuclear submarine and be able to use it. There is a skill set to actually learn how to use the software.
There's a bit of a learning curve on it.
Right. And I'm giving them credit, right? I will give them their flowers, where, yes, they have tutorials on everything, on every single page that you can dismiss immeditely. It'll keep it on the side.
There's manuals for nuclear submarines too. And
right.
I still don't know how to drive one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's, surprisingly enough, that's the thing, is that it is very copious at times, and it is a lot. And if you're like me, and you have that draw for wikis to just fill out everything.
You just like to
write.
You like to write. Yeah.
Yeah. And it starts to feel like a lot, and that's because it is a lot. It is the most of everything that's out there. And that can just be, it's just hard to fill out that information, and that's okay. It's also expensive, right? So I mentioned that the features of this are copious, but elaborate. Yeah. Right? It is a copious amount of features, almost too much.
Yeah.
Right? But elaborate in the sense of, you can do anything. You can ignore stuff if you want it to. That's fine. It won't break.
It's a maximalist approach. You can paint all the corners of it, if you want.
Yeah. If you want to paint in grayscale, go for it. Nothing wrong with that. If you want to paint in different shades of red, go for it. If you want to paint in all of the different colors, using them all at once, go for it. I'm not in charge, but it will add complexity to that.
Yeah.
And then the price is high. I will say that it is reasonable to steep, but that also depends on who you are.
Yeah.
If you are someone like, I don't know, Seth Ring, who is writing a lot of content, who wants to make...
This is part of your bread and butter.
Right.
Or maybe if you're getting paid to DM a campaign or something, you've got a little bit of an income stream to manage with it.
Or even if you have like people that are creating publicly, right, that are writing publicly, it has... interaction points and integration points for Patreon and other things like Ko-Fi, where you can actually add systems into it so that you can toggle an article, hey, I want my patrons to be able to read this, and then it pops up on their radar when they log into World Anvil too.
That's really nice.
It is really nice, but that's also an expensive feature. There is like a single pay option, which is cool. I think it's nice when software is able to do that, but it is also, again, expensive.
It's high, but it's a lifetime membership.
Right.
Yeah.
It is also reasonable for what you're getting. You are getting the nuclear submarine for a high price. That makes sense.
Actually, the nuclear submarine is just such a perfect analogy for this. Like, it's just really reaping dividends. They're expensive. They're complex.
Right.
They do a really specific job.
But they're really good at it.
But they're really good. And there's a manual.
Right.
Yeah.
So, it is something to just keep in mind that if you're just starting out, if you're starting to flex your muscles and learn about it, do the free trial. See if you want to get more into it.
Maybe once you've filled out that one note a little bit and you're thinking, I need some more flexibility, you've got a map on and it's like a little harder to integrate it.
100%. So that's something to consider. But I think my caution is people think, oh, World Anvil, that's the thing I heard about. Absolutely look at it. Just might not be baby's first world building software.
Yeah.
And that's just the fact of life.
My world building style is closer to this thing I'd seen with like a meme where someone's like, your worlds are so interactive and incredible. And they look at their notes and it just says sexy goblin with a question mark. I'm like, that's basically how I world build is like, I kind of just get into the game. I'm like, that was funny. I'm writing that down. Like, that's basically it. Like, and I keep a note folder and I write down what players seem to be interested in, and then I make sure I keep including that and like expand upon it. And like, oh, that was like a neat idea on the spot. I'll just throw that in there.
What's interesting is while you're running a session, World Anvil will actually allow you to add notes to things while you're running them. Yeah. Again, another really cool feature, but also another interaction point that now you have a laptop screen with World Anvil with sub menus that you're also keeping track of while doing some other stuff.
And you're like alt tabbing to your dice roller. And like
there's levels of complexity that you're adding to yourself by integrating it into the core of your life, which doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing.
Yeah.
But you might not need a nuclear submarine in your backyard. I'm just saying.
Yeah. I kind of look. I'm an American, and so
this is my God-given right
to have a submarine. You can't take it from me. I don't know how to drive it, but it's mine. So yeah, no, I'm there with you. I almost kind of feel like it's this would lend itself really well as well to multiple DM interactions. Like I've often considered, running campaigns basically with like if I was going to do something a little bit more in depth with world building, and I wanted to make a more deep, rich thing, I'd probably do co-DM and have one DM essentially be like a nemesis / NPC, and so they would be the people sort of controlling that, and their other function would be whoever's not working writes the notes.
And you can add access to that on the World Anvil too, surprisingly, as a feature.
Perfect. Again, like it's well designed and well thought through. Yeah, but it's like it's
complicated.
You may
at
have,
its core.
You may have choice anxiety. You might find yourself getting sucked into rabbit holes that you don't need to be going into, and it's like. My sense is that like you can probably get for most folks 90% of the way there with like a notes writing app. Yeah. Like, and then if you want to get that like last 10% out of your play, you really want to like dive deep. You want the interactive timelines, interactive maps, and that can really reap dividends.
100%.
World Anvil is a great place to go.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
that's a neat way to put it.
In understanding going to the last one, right? I was using World Anvil for a long time, but my personal thing is that for building a world, I had the time to basically sit down and write out a block of text very quickly and then go away for a little while. And I found that World Anvil, I had to take a couple steps to be able to do that and to navigate to the things that I wanted to do. And some of the organizational aspects of that was getting too hectic and heavy
puts a
lifting.
Little sand in the gears. You're trying too hard to get to stuff you're using all the time.
And I wasn't writing because of it. It ended up being that I was like, why am I paying for the software because I'm not using it frequently enough?
Too hard pile.
Even though I'm thinking to myself, I want to be writing today, there is a block that is happening because I am having to jump a hurdle.
Yeah, too much. Okay.
So this next software that I'm using is a Wiki software. It's personally what I'm using. It's not for everybody, but it is something that I really enjoy. And that is a new software that's still in beta. So I want to clarify that too. But it's called loremaster.io.
Loremaster.io.
And I'm a patron of them. I am going on there, and it is a Wiki setup, and it's designed to make, again, Wiki. That you have main categories that you build in, and then you can basically make as many subpages as you want. Yeah. And everything is just a clean UI. Yeah. It doesn't create, you can create some default categories when you first build a world, and it has a few prompts for that. But I just started with a blank slate, and I was able to make a really organized, nice system for myself for where I want to put in notes on things. Yeah. My favorite thing about it was that everything looks clean. And it's easy to put in information. And that's all I need.
There's a reason why Apple is still a thing. Yeah. Right? Like, and it's because simple, easy to use stuff. And like there's value in that as well. Like that's very tempting to me.
Yeah. And it's like, I won't get into the ethics of Apple's business practices, but at the end of the day,
that is
the iPhone is very popular with an older generation because you can set it to have big buttons. They're very clear and easy to use. It doesn't crash super often, and it's decent, nice features.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that
Yeah.
in its core. And that's kind of what this software does. You also can set each page to basically be a map or a text page.
Yeah.
And so you can have a world map, and then on that world map, you can click on an area or a button on that map that then goes to a second page, a subpage that's a region map.
Yeah.
You can then click on a button underneath that then goes to a city map. And then that could go, you click on a button, a subpage to a tavern map, then inside of somebody's skull next.
But the map of their brain.
Right.
Well, I was partly
their inner workings.
Yeah. It's interesting though, because like you've got like this design, and it's interesting. I was thinking about like that's really good, and I think it's again that anticipation of what most folks need, and you kind of like, the more you anticipate somebody's needs, the more risk you have of giving them something they don't need.
Right.
I was partly thinking like, and this seems quite broad and quite smooth and simple, which is nice. I was thinking about like, I'm making this map of the Feywild, and if you zoom in here, it's tea time. It's like where you're getting like into really like weird sort of like, there's a sense in which like you could almost see how somebody could be like, no, I want to create something that's just real weird and like out of the boundaries of what normal folks are generally making. And like, I could see that person be like, I'm going to use OneNote because it lets me zoom to tea time, like,
exactly.
in a way that other folks don't. Like, and it's like, it's again, that sort of thing of like, the more tools that you add, the more you're sort of funneling folks into this is your mentality with world building. And this sort of simple UI seems like a really great compromise.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of softwares that do, I would actually say the Wiki is probably the most common world building type software.
Yeah,
and so when I'm looking at these different, like basically businesses out there that are creating these apps, a lot of them have very similar features, but usually with like a specific angle of what they're trying to go for. This one was definitely like, hey, what if we just made the Wiki creation UI extremely simple, and so that you can be creating a new page for new content like that. Yeah. Does it have the prompts? It has some prompts, right? It's got an optional feature where on the right side, if you're like, I need to write something, but I don't know what, click a button and it gives you an idea, and then you write from that. But that's kind of it. It's not going to tell you like, so like, tell me about the life cycle of this fauna, which is a world anvil thing, but it's not in this. So if you're looking for that complexity, it's not in this app. But if you're looking for the simplicity and the jump in ability, then this is a really cool wiki software that I've been using. So I noted that it was features were selected and rudimentary because I think it has only a few features that it does well, but they're not necessarily robust and expanding. It's like, yep, it's precise and it does it well, and that's about it. And then its visual is elegant and customizable because you do have elements that you can go into the CSS code. You can add in custom stuff here and but it also works fine as is.
If you don't want to, you can just vanilla.
Like, hey, Control P, you print that out, and I've got a PDF that I can send to my players. Like, easy enough. That works for me. And then, that's Control Command P for you Macintosh people out there. I'm not bitter about Apple. And then, price point is, it's in beta, so it's like $5 a month right now. I didn't say I would do. It's a month right now.
They'll just like bleep you out or something. Yeah, no, that works. I mean, like it's okay to take a snapshot in time and be like, hey, this is where we're at. And well, as I say, we'll link, so like you can find that. That's really compelling. Yeah. Like I think that's really, really neat. I mean, there's a reason why Canadian rock sensation BNL say that vanilla is the finest of the flavors, and like that's how that's what draws people in.
Wait, what did you say? The Canadian rock sensation. What was it?
Bare Naked Ladies. Haven't you heard of them?
Oh, I thought you said
they've
BNL.
won 5 Grammys, John. No, how many have you won?
You said BNL, and I was like, BNL. Wait, Canadian rock sensation BNL. I was like, what is happening?
What are we even talking about?
What?
How do you not know? How do you not know about Bare Naked Ladies?
Oh my God.
They're Canadian treasure. They're that essential. Sorry, that was maybe my favorite moment ever in Community. I just can't stop. It lives rent free in my head. But no, it is true though. Like it's there's a reason why vanilla is the most popular, and there's a sense in which like creating software that does what the majority of what most people need with that customization is a really useful way to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I've got like 18 more if you want to go through them, or we could.
I think we might wrap it up here. I
Right,
think we got a lot of content. I think this is really, really good. But I think we'll have you on again.
Yeah.
Like I'd love to like hear more of this. This was really intriguing for me.
Yeah.
I think I know kind of directionally where I'd lean from what you're saying. And I think that's really useful. So I think I'll close this out here. Hey, just thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Worldcraft Club podcast. I hope this gave you some clarity on the sorts of world building software that would suit you, that would work best for what you're building. Whether you need a nuclear submarine or a go-kart, you've got different things that are just going to work well for you. And so we want you to connect with that and find that. So we'll put these resources in the show notes here, and I hope you found this enlightening. For myself, James, I'm your host. I'm joined here today by John. We've got producer Dave. And Seth is actually not even in the house. I don't even think he knows we're here. And then editor AJ back at home. It's been the Worldcraft Club. Thanks for listening. Bye. I think we should just get a supercut of just John turning his hat. It's like,
Goodbye.
goodbye.